Just to let you know, this episode features animal abuse, animal death, and an attempted suicide. Welcome to Filmability. My name's Joel Fisher, and I'm the author of Filmability, a history of disappointing cinema, which you can find on Amazon and Kindle and paperback. Welcome if you listened before, and welcome back if this is your first time listening. Remember, you can get the podcast wherever you can find your podcasts, and I'd appreciate it greatly if you were to like, share, subscribe, comment, and all that good stuff. This week's film is Monkey Shines, a 1988 horror movie directed by the great George A. Romero. He wrote the screenplay as well, and it's adapted from the novel of the same name by Michael Stewart. George A. Romero, of course, for those who don't know, directed Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, and the rest of the Dead franchise. He was the first person to coin the term zombie, and it has been used time and time again ever since. As usual, I'd suggest watching Monkey Shines before watching the film because I'm going to be spoiling all of it. If you'd like to watch Monkey Shines, then you can buy or rent it digitally, or you can watch it on MGM Plus through Amazon Prime. So with all that in mind, and without further ado, let's get on with the film. Okay, so the film opens with a card that says, "The Helping Hands program at the Boston University trains capuchin monkeys to assist the disabled." Monkeys in the film were trained by using many of the basic techniques pioneered by the program. Although some sequences may appear traumatic, no monkey was harmed in any way. Well, that's alright then. And the first scene we see is a house, and inside the house, a man gets up and hugs his naked girlfriend as she lays next to him before pulling the covers over her. His girlfriend's name is Linda, and she's played by Janine Turner. He does some exercises, fully naked, and then he gets ready to go outside with a backpack on his back. And I'm sure that the backpack is meant to be sort of weight training or something like that. That's sort of weighed down to make the run a bit more difficult. But he looks like a small child. This man is Alan, and he's played by Jason Begay. He goes for a run in the streets, and a dog comes out from one of the houses barking at him, which makes him jump and distracts him, and then he gets hit by a van. In the hospital, Alan is in surgery while the surgeons talk about what happened to him. In his hospital room, there are pictures of his life and well wishes, and even a "sorry about your accident" card, which seems a little insensitive. And then he's laying in bed with a full beard, and he looks depressed. So a lot of time has passed, and he's really not coming to terms with his injury yet. A man arrives at his house, and this is Dr. John Wiseman, played by Stanley Tucci. Alan's mother greets him at the door, and her name is Dorothy, and she's played by Joyce Van Patten. She introduces Dr. Wiseman to everyone and says that he saved their son's life. And Dr. Wiseman meets Linda as well and takes a bit of an interest in her as he's leering at her. Alan then comes home and he's in a wheelchair, an electric wheelchair, and his family all greet him happily. He has been paralysed from the neck down. And he has still got a beard. Linda goes into the kitchen and Marianne comes in to explain that she shouldn't be drinking too much alcohol. This is Alan's nurse, and she's played by Kirsten Forrest. Linda then makes a call to somebody called Jeffrey on the phone, asking him where the hell he is. And then in the next scene we cut to a man. He is seen with a small metal container making his way into a lab with loads of monkeys in cages. This is Jeffrey, and he's played by John Pankow. He takes the contents of the container out, and it turns out to be a human brain. He then takes a monkey out of a cage and injects himself with something to help him sleep. He then starts mixing things up in chemical jars and injects the monkey with the concoction. The monkey then helps out by pressing the button on the answer machine, and that's where he hears Linda's message to him. Jeffrey goes to see Alan at home, tapping on the window before letting himself in, and he notices the hoist that Alan needs to get into the bathroom. He comes in to see Alan, and he makes jokes about his condition in a little light-hearted way. It's clear that these are old friends, and that Jeffrey wants to make Alan feel at ease. Jeffrey apologises for not making it to the party, and he says Linda sounded distressed on the phone, but he was thinking about the situation, and although he puts the seed into Alan's mind, he says that if she does leave him, then it's her loss. Alan's watching TV with his mum when a budgie flies on top of the TV. Marianne comes in to get the budgie, it's her bird, and his mother says that Alan doesn't like animals in the house. And the next thing, Jeffrey's getting into his car and he sees some kids spraying graffiti on the wall on the lab. It turns out they're animal rights protesters. He goes in to see a doctor in his office, and the doctor asks him about the experiments on the monkeys, and that it seems that the experiments are there to make the monkeys smarter. And this is Dr. Dean Burbage, and he's played by Stephen Root, who you may have seen in various things. He's one of the great character actors in America, and this is his first time on screen. Jeffrey objects to the experiments and says that Dr. Burbage should fire him. There's clearly contention because, despite the fact that Jeffrey's doing what he's told, he's not happy about it. At the lab, one of the monkeys is getting an injection, and Jeffrey talks to the monkey about how she's practically half human now. She's growing more intelligent every day, apparently. At Alan's, he's using a mouthpiece to turn pages and read a book. He's also using voice commands to change the lighting and open the curtains, but he's also having trouble getting used to the tech. And this seems like a good opportunity to talk about this assistive tech that's used in Monkey Shines, because the tech has changed over the years. Whether it may have seemed a bit too futuristic considering the era, there were advancements being made in the late 80s with voice-activated tech. However, it was still very early on, and users would have had to carefully and clearly use their speech, spacing out words so that they could be understood. Although that isn't to say that it always worked perfectly, with background noise and the tone in somebody's voice affecting the efficiency of the tech. Also, Helping Hands stopped operating helper monkeys in 2021. Capuchin monkeys were once seen as the perfect assistants because of their tiny hands being ideal for fine motor skills, where their owners were not capable of doing that properly. They were also very intelligent, easy to train, and have a lifespan of about 40 years. However, dogs are seen as much better assistants and companions because of their loyalty, the ease of their training, and their tendency to follow orders. Capuchin monkeys are, after all, wild animals, and should be treated as such, because taking them out of their natural environments could lead to problems later on in life where they may feel that they are not where they are supposed to be. However, then Jeffrey comes in, and it seems that Alan has tried to suffocate himself with a plastic sheet. It's a shocking scene. It's a suicide attempt, basically, and it just feels there for shock value and to really put across to the audience that Alan is not in his right mind. At the hospital, Alan's mother is by his bedside, and Dr. Wiseman suggests that she goes away because he thinks that her presence may be making it worse for Alan. He talks to Jeffrey about how many people try to kill themselves because they become quadraplegic. And then Linda comes in, and she goes off with Dr. Wiseman as he wants to talk to her, but Jeffrey can see that he's doing something, so he basically accuses them of being a snake in the grass, as he can see that he's after Linda despite the fact that Alan is laying in the hospital. A woman sitting in a wheelchair, she's giving commands to a monkey in the next scene. Then she gets out of the chair and makes sure that the monkey goes back to his cage. This is Melanie, and she's played by Kate McNeil. She goes outside and she meets Jeffrey, introducing herself, and they talk about her training monkeys. She says that they're fine unless they go around peeing on everything to mark their territory. He says he thinks he has a monkey that would be great for her project, but he assures her that she is perfectly healthy. Jeffrey and Melanie then take the monkey round to Alan's, and he shows Alan what it can do, including giving Alan his drinking cup. This monkey's name is Ella, and she's played by Boo. And I'll talk a bit more about that later. Marianne is a little agitated at first because Ella goes near her budgie, but then she soon settles, and they leave Ella with Alan while Jeffrey goes to his car and packs up his things. Marianne comes back and Ella has turned on the stereo and is dancing to the music. Alan is amazed, his mood has lifted, he seems much happier, although Marianne is still not as keen. And there's a montage of Melanie and Alan showing him how to get Ella to do things and how to treat her by blowing on a tube on his chair which releases a treat for her. Ella then cleans up various things in the house and briefly growls at Linda as she sees her through the window. She then puts a sandwich into a device which can be moved to Alan's mouth. It's sort of a metal grabbing device, so it grabs itself around the sandwich and then Alan could eat it hands-free as such. Ella is helping Alan with a book while Marianne is complaining about Ella. Alan complains to Marianne because Ella's food container is empty, and she goes to the cupboard to find them, but it seems that Ella has already got the packet of treats and she's put them in her cage. Alan's reading a book in the next scene, but Ella is turning out all the lights and she sits in his lap because she wants to distract him and she gives him a hug. Music plays as they hug and he notices that she doesn't like his beard. She gives him a bit of a bite as well. It's a bit of a shock for him, but she doesn't mean any harm. In the next scene, Alan is in the bathroom and Melanie is shaving him clean. He gets cut by accident though, and Ella comes to attend to him, but Alan says not to worry, but still, Ella is looking angry, baring her teeth, and she might be getting a little bit more angry. At a university, Alan is sitting at the front of the class, and the teacher asks him a question, and Ella puts her hand up, and everybody laughs. But then Alan answers the question, and he gets it right. Alan and Melanie are then fishing in the stream in the next scene, and she lets the fish go and goes to sit on the blanket. They talk for a bit, but they decide to go home because it's getting cold. At home, Alan shows Jeffrey how Ella can help him use a telephone. He asks Ella to call Jeffrey, but she hesitates, and Alan says that it's because she knows that he's already there, so there's no point in calling him. Jeffrey then leaves the room and she puts the card into the phone to call him, and he goes to his answer machine. Jeffrey comes back and he's a little concerned about her behaviour because she's not really supposed to be able to know things like that. That's not her level of intelligence. And Alan asks him what's wrong, and he says there's nothing, and he goes to get a beer. Ella follows him, and while they're in the kitchen, he gives her another injection. And this time she gets angry. She's banging things on the counter and making a noise, and she makes Alan think that there's something wrong. Later on at the lab, the doctor is with Jeffrey, and he notices he knows how one of the monkeys died, saying he hoped it wasn't the one he was injecting. Jeffrey says he's fed up with dealing with him and he storms out. So basically he's hidden Ella away and faked her death. What could go wrong? Back home, Alan gets angry with Marianne, accusing her of not doing her job properly. It's rather out of character for Alan. He's taken a bit of a turn, and she says that Ella is making all the mess, and it's not her. It seems that Alan and Ella are also getting closer. Marianne's budgie then flies into the room and heads straight for Alan's face, causing him and Ella to panic. But then Marianne comes back in and helps him up as he's nearly fallen out of bed. He wants her to get rid of the bird, threatening her, and she leaves. But then Ella gets out of her cage and goes to Marianne's room, sitting on the end of her bed and growling. And then she finds the budgie cage and she opens it. The next day, Marianne wakes up concerned for her budgie, and as she picks up her slippers, the budgie falls out of it and it's dead. Then at the lab, Jeffrey is filling up a hypodermic needle and he starts to inject the other monkeys. And then we're shown a POV shot, and it seems like this is Ella going through some grass and bushes, and it cuts to Alan at home as the doorbell rings. It's like they've got some kind of mental link, perhaps. His mother arrives and she comes in saying that she thought that something was wrong. She feeds Alan as Marianne comes down the stairs, and she accuses Alan of killing her budgie, saying that he got Ella to do it. Alan then tells her that the budgie deserved to die. Again, this is deepening anger in Alan, and it's certainly not how we've known him before. In a bathroom, Alan is in a hoist and he's being cleaned by his mother. He says he feels embarrassed and she says it's okay. And she tells him that she's selling her business and her house and her car and she's going to move in with him. And yes, he is fully naked in the bath, in the hoist. And yes, there are moments where disabled people may be put into situations that are less than dignified. I've been put into hoists or certain positions with people I've only just met, and sometimes it can feel awkward. Thankfully, for the most part, those have been medical professionals, but sometimes having to rely on people to help you with things that you may not be able to do by yourself means that you have to disassociate a little and see the funny side. There's even been an experience I had when I was in a hoist, and the sensation can be best described as being picked up out of the sea in a net, like a school of fish, and dumped on the land. I was also surrounded by, I think, about 4 or 5 nurses, and I was young, so I could easily make a joke. However, it must have looked as weird for them as it did for me. In bed, Alan thinks that his hand has started to move, and he tries to get his mother's attention, but she doesn't see it. And then we cut again to the POV shot. Ella's moving through the streets, and in bed, Alan wakes up, startled, and his mother asks him if he's alright because you can hear him through a speaker. It's sort of a baby monitor kind of thing, but I think under the situation, it's understandable. When Alan is dressed, he sees Ella, and he thinks that she can get out of her cage somehow. It's like she's got her own consciousness and her own motives, and maybe there's something going on between them. Anyway, Jeffrey comes over and Alan tells him that he thinks Ella can get out of her cage and that he's been having dreams about her from her point of view, saying that he thinks that they're becoming one, which is a low-key terrifying thing to say to somebody, but we'll see how it goes. At hospital, another doctor tells Alan and Melanie about what happened to Alan's spine after the accident. This is Dr. Williams, and he's played by William Newman. And if some of you might recognise him, I certainly did when I saw this. I looked him up, and he is the children entertainer in Mrs. Doubtfire, who is a bit old and doddery and needs to be replaced. So it's fun. I mean, I don't know if anybody else does this, but when I see somebody who I think I recognise in a film or a TV show, I have to look them up. I have to know where I've seen them before, so I'm not going mad. Anyway, Dr. Newman says that Dr. Wiseman may have been able to save Alan, and he didn't need to have operated on his spine. In the car on the way home, Alan's angry about this. He says he wants revenge on Dr. Wiseman. And Melanie says that she doesn't like the way that he's talking. Then at home, a red light moves over a card and Ella puts it in the phone, calling Dr. Wiseman's office. He then calls him at home, and when the doctor picks up, nobody answers. And it turns out that the doctor is with Linda. They kiss, and it seems it's quite a steamy relationship, and he's definitely done the dirty on Alan. At home, Alan and Ella are looking at each other. Alan bites his lip and Ella goes over to him to lick it better. It's like Alan is a child or a mate and Ella is cleaning his wound. It's creepy. Then we cut to a POV shot of Ella showing her going to the doctor's house, and there's a flame that rises. The next day, Alan's mother is on the phone and she's distressed, and she starts to tell Alan about the doctor and that him and his girlfriend have died in the fire. But Alan already knows. Ooh. Jeffrey then comes over and is surprised about how Alan thinks that Ella did it because he's been thinking about how he'd kill him. Melanie says that monkeys are scared of fire though, and she lights a firelighter and moves it towards Ella, who moves away. Alan says that she might just be reacting because she knows what it can do, and Jeffrey puts Ella on a lead and he leaves with her as she's screaming. Alan says that it's probably best not to bring her back because he can start to feel a change in his personality, and with what's happened with Ella, there may be a connection. Melanie suggests that they go to her place and she wants him to forget about what happened, and Alan bursts into tears. It's obviously been a lot of stress having this psychological change and having this influence that he can't explain. It's all a bit too much. At her place, Melanie's making up a bed for Alan. She leans in to help him and he moves his head to her chest. He's making a move, basically. He's trying to show affection and it's the only thing he can do. It's an awkward moment. However, the next part, they are laying in bed together and kissing, and they start to have sex. And it's quite a steamy scene, and she starts to ride him and holds onto the hoist above the bed, and they're having sex, basically. I could have done without the hoist myself. I think that's a bit much in the scene. But also, Melanie lives with a load of monkeys, and they're watching and they're getting quite excited. For what could have been a quite romantic scene, does unfortunately in this aspect become a little comical. At Jeffrey's, he thinks that Alan must be the key to Ella's behaviour, and he injects Ella again, but she doesn't complain this time. It's like she knows what it does and she's growing to like it. She goes to the window, trying to get out, and Jeffrey starts to realise that there is a really strong bond between her and Alan. Back at the hospital, Doc Williams says that Alan has to show some kind of movement before he can operate on him. And then at home, Alan's mother complains because he didn't call her. They're coming back and she doesn't know where he's been, and Melanie arrives and she puts two and two together. At the lab, Jeffrey finds that Ella has stolen the serum that he's been injecting her with, and finds one last container, injecting himself thinking he can connect with Ella. At home, Alan asks his mum if she's heard anything from Jeffrey. His mum thinks that Melanie convinced him to get rid of Ella. At the lab, Jeffrey is unconscious as he dreams about Ella going outside. It seems that maybe there is a link with the chemical and the psychic bond. She's arriving at Alan's house, and in the bath, Alan is talking to his mum, talking about how it could all work with Melanie. And he suddenly gets angry with his mum, knowing that Ella is near and that he's got a strong bond with her and it's out of his control. It's a change in his personality, and he starts to worry that Melanie might be in danger if she ever came near, and he asks his mum to call her. She calls, but she tells Melanie that Alan has gone to bed. She's crossing a boundary now, I think. She's being controlling rather than caring. In bed, Alan apologises, but then they start to argue again, because his mother feels worthless because she gave up everything and he treats her like shit. He gets angry again, calling her names, and she slaps him repeatedly. He tells her he hates her, and she leaves the room crying, but Alan calls out to her because he regrets what he's done in the argument. At the lab, monkeys have escaped, and Jeffrey loads up a needle with poison, but they're all causing chaos. It's going to take a lot for Jeffrey to gain control. Alan is calling for his mother, but Ella is there and she's in the bathroom as Alan's mother is in the bath. Ella gets hold of a hairdryer that's plugged into a wall and drops it into the bath, killing her. It's a bit of a cliche, but it's a cabbaging monkey. What else is she going to do? Jeffrey's escaped and he's come to Alan's place. It seems like the monkeys weren't that hard to deal with in the first place. The lights go out and Jeffrey leaves Alan alone in bed. Jeffrey then finds Alan's mother in the bath and he helps Alan get out of bed and into his chair as Alan talks about the animal instinct, blaming himself. He feels that the bond between them has become too strong and he doesn't have any control anymore. Jeffrey confesses that he's been injecting Ella, and Alan gets angry about it, as you would imagine, and Ella appears on Jeffrey's shoulder. And there's a struggle, and she gets him on the floor, but he manages to escape, despite having had his hand cut. He goes to the bathroom, and as he's cleaning up, he's cleaning the blood off of his hand. Ella appears next to him on the sink, and he goes to get something to put in the hypodermic needle to deal with her. He goes upstairs and something falls over as Alan is worried, but he's downstairs and he can't do anything about it. Ella then appears again and starts to bite through the telephone wire, cutting off any communication with the outside, either in or out. Alan manages to move his chair under a phone that's in the kitchen, but he can't quite reach it, and Ella manages to get Alan's chair out of the way. The phone falls down and Melanie's on the other side, worried that nobody's on the other side. And Alan tries to move his chair away, but then it seems that the telephone wire has been wrapped around a part of his chair and he can't get away. Upstairs, Jeffrey's looking for Ella in the corridor, and he turns on a light in a cupboard, and Ella jumps out of that and attacks him. This monkey is teleporting now. She's getting everywhere. It's mad. I don't know what's going on now. It's hilarious. She walks away with the needle in her paw, and it seems that she's already stabbed Jeffrey with it. He comes down to see Alan, and he's already quite doped up and affected by the chemical, and he's babbling, and Alan wants him to untangle the phone wire so they can get away. But Jeffrey then passes out on the floor. However, somehow Alan has still managed to untangle himself from the chair. He starts doing voice commands to open the door and the curtains, but Ella turns off the power and closes the door. Alan tries to coax Ella towards him by offering Ella a treat. She gets up on his lap and with a box of treats, and she starts feeding them to him. He's the pet now, it seems. I mean, if you haven't figured it out by now, this film is a little bit silly and a bit bizarre. Alan gets to put on some music and turn the lights on. He tells her to go to the kitchen, and while she's in the kitchen, Alan moves his chair to the window, and he tries to get someone's attention, but Ella returns and sits on Alan's shoulders, growling at him. Alan then goes to the kitchen, and Ella has to prepare a meal, complete with candles. I mean, it's clear that she doesn't give a shit about fire. She quite likes it. Alan encourages her to bond with him mentally, and then we see her go outside. Alan sees Melanie's van through Ella's vision, and he wakes up, talking to himself, telling Melanie to go away. She knocks on the door and sees him inside, and then she uses a rock to break the window, and Alan tells her to go away, saying that he doesn't want her to get hurt. Ella appears though and attacks Melanie, biting her and running away back to her cage. But Melanie then hits her head and knocks herself unconscious as she's trying to get up. Ella lights a fire lighter and tries to set her on fire, but it's not working. She's trying to get her clothes and her hair, but it keeps going out. Anna stops her and she gets another match from somewhere else, but it keeps going out as well. Ella then gets on Alan's lap, and as Melanie suggested before, she marks her territory on him, peeing in his lap. Alan then says he's going to kill her, and he tries to use his chair to wake up Melanie, sort of gently nudging her. It's a real dramatic turning point. I may not be putting it across as well, but it's the point where Alan has to do something. Ella then brings a hypodermic needle, and she moves it close to Melanie's face, which causes Alan to panic, and he uses all his strength that he can to move his hand as it was moving slightly earlier, and he hits the play button on the music, which stops Ella in her tracks. She gets up onto his lap, and as she gets closer, Alan takes a bite out of her, gripping onto her fur tightly as he waves her body around and finally dropping her onto the floor as she's dead. This is a wild scene. If you've not seen the movie, I would suggest there's a GIF. You can see it. I mean, I'm not sure how else Alan would have stopped her, but the way that it's done in the film is very silly. And then later on, it seems everything's okay. Alan's at the hospital. He's on his front and he's getting an operation. The doctor goes to cut open the spine, but then Ella bursts out of the spine and she's screaming, and Alan wakes up with a fright. I mean, that's good. That's really... He doesn't even think it's over, so jump scare. But the mind to concoct that idea is quite good. It's a bit of a high point. But anyway, it turns out he's actually in hospital, he's awake, and Melanie's there. And then later on, he's taken outside after he's had the operation, and he's using a wheelchair, a manual wheelchair. And he goes up to Melanie's van, and he gets to his feet with the help of crutches, and he gets into the van, and they drive away. And let's cap it off with talking about disability as a reward, because this is a common thing in cinema when portraying a disabled person. There's some kind of framing where disability is seen as something that is seen as a punishment, taking something away from somebody who seems to have the perfect life. Whether it be sight, hearing, or even the ability to walk, every now and then a film will depict disability as the worst thing that could ever possibly happen to somebody. Equally so, the reversal of disability can be seen as a reward. The blind person can suddenly get their sight back for no other reason than the plot. A deaf person can suddenly hear something that can help them later on and make their life better. Or the wheelchair user could suddenly stand and walk again because it bookends the story nicely. Whereas in Monkey Shines, Melanie's attraction to Alan doesn't seem to be affected by his disability, it is implied that his recovery will just make their lives so much better. Okay, so that was the film, and up next I'll be talking a bit more about what I think about the film in general, and what I think it means for a non-disabled audience. Monkey Shines is a very silly horror movie in its premise and in its execution. There really was no way a horror film with a capuchin monkey could actually be scary, and just the thought of the cute little monkey is laughable at best, even when she does bare her teeth. The film serves as one of those rare finds where if you know the actors involved, you'd be very surprised to find them there, especially Tani Tucci, but everybody does their best with what they can. If it were played more for comedy, then it may have come across better. However, it feels like something Stephen King would have written and discarded for being too daft. Makes a welcome change though that the only disabled person in a horror film is not a victim, even though it ends up that way in the climax. But the bizarre mind melding between Ella and Alan only emphasises how this tiny little monkey is committing horrible crimes because the quadraplegic man cannot. Okay, so starting off, as I said earlier, this is the first film role for Stephen Root. He was then a stage actor. According to Root, he had been instructed by his agent not to let the casting directors know that he was inexperienced with film as an actor. Root's official debut was Quadraplegic Dundee 2, also released in 1988, but it had been released in theatres a month before this film, despite being shot a month after. This was George A. Romero's first studio film. However, the studio he was working with, Orion Pictures, had recut the film against Romero's wishes, which contributed to the box office failure of the film. Afterwards, Romero went back to independent filmmaking until The Dark Half, which is also from Orion. George A. Romero changed the ending at the insistence of Orion Pictures. Romero's original ending was considerably less optimistic. It implied the film's evil forces were still at work. He said, "I thought my ending played well, but I'd admit that the testing results were overwhelmingly in favour of the current version." To Orion's credit, they said, "It's up to you, we'll release it either way, so I decided to go along and not fight it." He grinned, "But I'll always miss it." When Alan is experiencing his episodes of rage, his teeth change to resemble that of a monkey, primarily elongated canines. And I mean, it's quite subtle, but I think there were moments that I did notice. Also, this is one of the very few films depicting a quadriplegic having sex. As I mentioned earlier, it may not have been as well executed as it could have been, but it stands nonetheless. This is one of the few films in history to have a male monkey as well. Females are generally used due to not being as aggressive as males. So, although it was Ella in the film, Boo is a male monkey. Jason Beghe goes on to star in the TV show Chicago PD, and John Pankow guest stars as a judge friend of his on several episodes. Okay, that's it for this week. Next week I'll be talking about a film called Out of My Mind, about a girl with cerebral palsy who's non-verbal, but her inner voice is Jennifer Aniston. If you'd like to contact me, you can do so via Bluesky at bluesky.com/film-ability. You can also email me at film-ability@outlook.com. And if you'd like to make a contribution to the things that I do here, you can find me at Patreon at patreon.com/film-ability. You can also find my book at Amazon on Kindle and paperback called Filmability, A History of Disability in Cinema. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.